You know, I guess you never miss something that you never had, you know. Yeah. But she did a great job of being.
It was 1975, a year when music icons were setting the stage for one of the most surprising celebrity unions of the 20th century. Cher, the glamorous pop and television queen, had just emerged from a high-profile, tumultuous marriage to Sonny Bono, her partner both in life and in the world of entertainment. Cher's personal life had been fraught with emotional ups and downs, and though her professional career as a solo artist and television star was thriving, she found herself looking for something more, something new. Enter Gregg Allman, the soulful rock and roll legend who was known for his heart-wrenching music and his own turbulent personal life. He was the lead singer of the Allman Brothers Band, a pioneering Southern rock group that had made waves with their mix of blues, rock, and jazz fusion. Gregg was far from Cher's usual type. She had always been drawn to the structured, polished world of entertainment, whereas Gregg was deeply entrenched in the wild, unstructured world of rock and roll. But the magnetic pull between the two was undeniable. Cher and Gregg Allman, the unlikely romance that shook the world. Their chemistry was immediate. Gregg, with his scruffy demeanor and raw emotional energy, contrasted sharply with Cher's glitzy and polished persona. Yet it was precisely this contrast that drew them to each other. Gregg was the living embodiment of the rock and roll ethos, chaotic, passionate, and free-spirited. Cher, by contrast, had spent years under the control of her previous marriage, a relationship that had, despite its public success, often felt like a gilded cage. Gregg represented freedom, rawness, and unpredictability, everything that Cher had longed for, and he, in turn, was captivated by Cher's confidence, intelligence, and beauty. Their love story unfolded quickly, as most passionate romances do. The couple seemed inseparable almost from the moment they met. In the eyes of the public, their union was a surprise. Two polar opposites coming together in what seemed to be an illogical, yet undeniable attraction. But the chemistry was real, and it didn't take long for them to marry. They bypassed the typical dating phase and leapt straight into marriage, as though driven by an unstoppable force. For the public, it was thrilling, a fairy tale romance between two of the most iconic figures in music. But for those close to them, it was clear that this whirlwind romance came with a slew of complications that would eventually tear them apart. The speed of their relationship, an emotional roller coaster. From the outside, Cher and Gregg's relationship seemed to be moving at lightning speed. They were two stars from vastly different musical worlds, yet their love for each other was undeniable. The media coverage was intense, and in a sense, they were living in a bubble, completely consumed by the whirlwind of their passion. They didn't take the time to truly understand each other. There was no gradual process of getting to know one another, no real dating phase to test the waters. They got married quickly, skipping over the usual steps that couples take to build a solid foundation for their future. They said "I do" in a flurry of emotions, without having fully processed the weight of the commitment they were making. But it was not long before cracks began to appear in their seemingly perfect union. One of the most significant issues was Gregg's battle with substance abuse, a problem that he had kept hidden from Cher until after their wedding. He had been struggling with addiction to drugs and alcohol for years, and as much as he loved Cher, the demons he faced were not easily overcome. In their early days together, Gregg eventually found the courage to confess his struggles to Cher. In a raw and vulnerable moment, he told her about his addiction. It was a bombshell, one that could have easily torn their marriage apart right then and there. Yet Cher's reaction was not one of anger or shock. Instead, she asked him a simple yet profound question. What is the solution? It was an unexpected response, a testament to her resilience and her deep love for him. Cher was determined to help him fight his demons, and for a while, it seemed like their relationship might overcome the shadow of his addiction. Cher's commitment to helping Gregg through his struggles was admirable. She didn't shy away from the challenge. Instead, she took on the role of the supportive wife, convinced that their love was strong enough to overcome any obstacle. But addiction, as most people know, is not easily beaten. Despite their best efforts, Gregg's battle with drugs and alcohol continued to undermine their relationship. The emotional toll on Cher was immense, and she soon realized that no matter how much she loved him, she could not rescue him from himself. The cracks appear. A marriage shrouded in chaos. The first signs of trouble appeared not long after their wedding. It didn't take long for Gregg's behavior to spiral out of control. He began disappearing for days on end, lost in a haze of drugs and alcohol. Cher, who had been so hopeful about their future, found herself alone, wondering whether she had married a man or a ghost. His absences became frequent, and Cher was left to fend for herself, grappling with the loneliness and frustration of being married to someone who seemed to care more about his substances than about their relationship. The emotional toll was overwhelming. Cher's patience began to wear thin as she realized that no amount of love or support could change Gregg's behavior. The reality of their situation became painfully clear. She had married a man who was not ready or willing to change. And that, ultimately, was the breaking point. After just 9 days of marriage, Cher made the difficult decision to file for divorce. The ink on their marriage certificate hadn't even dried before their relationship began to unravel. It was a stunning and abrupt end to what had been a passionate, albeit chaotic, romance. For Gregg, the reality of the situation hit hard. He woke up one morning to find that Cher had packed her bags and left. No tearful goodbyes, no explanations, just the cold, hard truth that his actions had driven away one of the most famous women in the world. In his memoir, My Cross to Bear, Gregg reflected on that moment, admitting that it was then that he realized the gravity of what he had lost. Desperate to salvage his marriage, he did what many would consider a last-ditch effort. He begged Cher to come back. Shockingly, Cher agreed to give him a second chance. The second chance. A love that couldn't be saved. But why did Cher give Gregg a second chance? It's a question that many have asked, given her fame, beauty, and the endless list of men who would have been more than willing to be with her. The answer, as Cher revealed in interviews and books, lies in the deep, intense bond she shared with Gregg. There was something magnetic about their connection, something that went beyond logic or reason. It was a force that seemed to draw them together, despite the chaos that surrounded their relationship. Cher has often described their love as intense and almost celestial, like two stars in orbit around each other. The pull was so strong that, despite Gregg's issues, she felt an overwhelming desire to make it work. She wanted to believe that their love could save him, that somehow, with her support, Gregg could overcome his addiction, and they could have the life together that they both longed for. But, unfortunately, the reality didn't match the fairy tale. Despite their efforts, things never truly changed. Gregg's addiction remained a constant shadow over their relationship, and no amount of love or effort could overcome it. Cher's patience, once unwavering, began to wear thin. The emotional strain of being with someone who wasn't willing to change became too much to bear. In the end, Cher made the painful decision to walk away. The final breakup, the end of a dream. Interestingly enough, Cher later revealed in her memoir, CH, the memoir, Part 1, that the breakup was not entirely initiated by her. According to Cher, Gregg actually broke up with her first, in a note. The cause? Gregg's jealousy and frustration over Cher's renewed relationship with her ex-husband, Sonny Bono. The tabloid media had made a spectacle of the situation, creating a love triangle involving Cher, Sonny, and Gregg. Gregg could not handle the public scrutiny, and he chose to end things with Cher in a fit of frustration. This revelation was shocking to many, as it painted a different picture of the breakup than the one originally presented to the public. Cher's side of the story provided a deeper insight into the emotional turmoil she had endured throughout their marriage, and how, despite her best efforts, their relationship could not withstand the pressures of fame, addiction, and personal struggles. A brief but intense love affair, Cher's marriage to Gregg was marked by an intensity that few could have predicted. Despite the seemingly perfect outward appearances of their romance, there were deep, unresolved issues beneath the surface. One of the biggest challenges was Gregg's ongoing battle with substance abuse. Though he was honest with Cher about his struggles, his addiction soon became an insurmountable obstacle to their relationship. In her memoir, Cher. The Memoir Part 1, Cher shared the shocking revelation that, just days after their wedding, she found white powder among Gregg's belongings. This moment served as a wake-up call that would shape much of the narrative of their tumultuous relationship. Cher, despite being deeply in love with Gregg, knew that something had to give. As she faced the harsh reality of his addiction, Cher found herself at a crossroads. She struggled with a deep sense of foreboding, unsure of what the future held for their marriage. She confessed that, upon discovering the drugs, she was forced to make a difficult decision. The notion of being married to someone who was still deeply entrenched in a life of addiction made her question whether this was the right path for her. This was especially complicated by the fact that Cher was also dealing with her own career and personal responsibilities, which often took precedence over her relationship with Gregg. Despite her unwavering love for him, Cher began to feel the weight of the situation growing heavier with each passing day. The stress of managing a rock star husband battling addiction while trying to maintain her own career, which was still in full swing, began to wear on Cher. She had always prided herself on being strong, independent, and capable of handling her personal and professional lives simultaneously. But Gregg's struggles pushed her to the brink. Adding to the emotional burden was the fact that she had recently learned she was pregnant. This news, while initially exciting, brought even more complications to an already volatile situation. The abortion decision and the strain on their marriage. Cher's decision to terminate her pregnancy was a deeply personal and painful one, made under intense emotional pressure. As she recounted in her memoir, the decision came after much thought and consideration. The realization that she couldn't bring a child into a chaotic and unstable environment filled her with a sense of dread and uncertainty. Gregg's drug use, his inability to maintain a stable relationship with her, and her concerns about her own career led her to conclude that she wasn't in a position to have a child at that moment. It wasn't a decision made lightly, but one that seemed necessary given the circumstances. The emotional toll of the decision was compounded by her lack of support from Gregg. She had hoped that he would be there for her, offering reassurance and compassion, but instead, he was lost in his own addiction and emotional turmoil. The gap between them seemed to widen as their marriage unraveled, and despite her best efforts, Cher found herself in a situation where her love for Gregg couldn't save them. Adding to the complexity of the situation was the fact that Gregg and Cher were often physically separated due to their demanding careers. This absence only exacerbated the problems in their relationship. Cher was left to navigate the emotional roller coaster of her marriage alone, and when the cracks in their union began to show, she couldn't ignore them any longer. The end of their marriage, a battle of egos and addictions. Despite their best efforts to salvage their marriage, it was clear that the relationship between Cher and Gregg was doomed. The final straw came when Cher filed for divorce, just 9 days after their whirlwind wedding. The quick dissolution of their marriage shocked the public, but in many ways, it was inevitable given the circumstances. Gregg, in his memoir, My Cross to Bear, later admitted that he had been fully aware that his marriage to Cher was always going to be a struggle. His addiction, his emotional distance, and the vast differences between their worlds made it impossible for him to fully commit to the relationship. He confessed that he simply didn't know how to love Cher the way she deserved, and that his struggles with substance abuse made him emotionally unavailable. Gregg's acknowledgement of this fact was a rare moment of self-reflection from a man who had spent much of his life in the throes of addiction and rock and roll rebellion. But despite his failings, Gregg also expressed regret. He recognized that he had let Cher down and that their marriage had been one of his biggest mistakes. However, at the time, it was too late to undo the damage that had been done. The pressures of their marriage, combined with their contrasting lifestyles, proved to be too much to overcome. Gregg was more at home in the gritty, chaotic world of rock tours and late-night jam sessions, while Cher thrived in the glamorous, high-profile world of Hollywood. In the years that followed, Gregg would continue to battle his demons, while Cher would go on to rebuild her life, stronger than ever. She would eventually find new love and success, but her time with Gregg remained a bittersweet chapter in her life. Despite the pain and heartbreak, she still spoke of him with affection, acknowledging that their love was real, even if it was doomed from the start. The reconciliation and regret, a tale of lost love. Interestingly, Cher's view of Gregg's legacy would evolve over the years. Though their marriage ended in a storm of drama, addiction, and emotional strain, Cher never fully severed her connection to Gregg. Years after their split, she would pay tribute to him following his death in 2017, a gesture that stunned many. In a heartfelt tribute on social media, Cher expressed her inability to find the right words to explain the complex feelings she had for Gregg. She admitted that, despite everything, she still loved him in some way, even though their relationship had been riddled with tragedy and heartache. This acknowledgement, though bittersweet, spoke to the depth of their connection. Cher's tribute to Gregg was not just a public display of respect for the man he had become later in life, but also a recognition of the love that had once existed between them, despite all of its flaws. Gregg's own reflections on their marriage, shared in interviews and his autobiography, revealed the depth of his remorse. In his later years, he would express regret for how he treated Cher and for not being the husband she deserved. The candidness with which he spoke about his struggles was a testament to the profound impact their relationship had on him. Gregg admitted that he had been unable to fully love Cher due to his addiction, and in the years after their divorce, he came to understand just how much he had lost. Cher's strength and resilience, a legacy of love and heartbreak. Cher's ability to move on from her marriage to Gregg Allman and find new success in her career and personal life was a testament to her resilience. She refused to let the heartbreak of her marriage define her. Instead, she channeled her pain into her art, becoming an even stronger figure in the entertainment world. Cher's journey is one of reinvention, perseverance, and a refusal to be defined by the men she married or the hardships she faced. Despite her tumultuous romance with Gregg, Cher emerged from the experience with a renewed sense of strength. She would later speak about how difficult it had been to balance her career and personal life. But ultimately, she proved that love and loss were not the end of her story. Cher's ability to rise above the challenges she faced in her marriage to Gregg Allman serves as a reminder that even in the face of deep pain and regret, it is possible to find strength and move forward. In the end, the story of Cher and Gregg Allman is one of love, loss, and self-discovery. Their relationship, though brief, left an indelible mark on both of their lives. It was a whirlwind romance marked by passion, addiction, and emotional turmoil, but it also brought moments of deep connection and understanding. It's a reminder that even the most intense love stories can be filled with contradictions and complexities. And sometimes, despite the love, the relationship just can't survive. The legacy of their union, the failed album, and lasting impact. Perhaps one of the most telling symbols of the incompatibility between Cher and Gregg was the album they released together, To the Hard Way. The project was an ambitious attempt to merge their musical worlds, Cher's pop prowess and Gregg's southern rock roots. It was a daring concept, but the execution was disastrous. Critics savaged the album, calling it a vanity project, and accusing the couple of lacking any real musical chemistry. The album's failure mirrored the breakdown of their marriage, highlighting the differences between them both personally and professionally. In the end, Cher and Gregg's marriage was a cautionary tale, a whirlwind romance that burned bright, but ultimately couldn't survive the chaos that surrounded it. Though their time together was brief, it left a lasting impact on both of their careers and personal lives. Cher moved on, as she always has, finding strength and resilience in the aftermath. Gregg, too, continued his journey, but their time together was a defining chapter in both of their lives.